Hello and welcome to another video or episode, depending on whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast player, because podcast is available on both. So today's thought is around the question: do you need a forest for forest school, or do you need wilderness for wilderness therapeutic interventions? What level of nature do you need to achieve? And the simplest answer is as much as you can get. And the other simple answer is do what you can with where you are with what you have. That's so, but there's facets within that. So spaces are important. That's undeniable. And I see a lot of forest school leaders working really hard in difficult circumstances to provide what they can. And the forest school site may only have one tree. It may only be a little patch of tarmac outside back of a building. But in many cases, in the absence of anything better, you work with what you have. And this is a similar debate that we have any time we start talking about the forest school ethos and the forest school rules, or it's forest school guidelines, the pillars of forest school, whatever they're called. It's been a little while. They're a set of characteristics that we would see to go, this is forest school. And there's been quite a bit of debate any time that gets brought up, because a lot of people struggle to meet those standards, such as having a large block of time within a day and several sessions a row. Often forest school is that thing that gets done once a year for the good kids, and there's a good argument that that's not forest school. But do those children deserve to have that at least? Absolutely. Will it benefit them? Yes. But what we always end up talking about is depth. If you are not prepared to provide the full extent of forest school, then you should not expect the full extent of forest school's benefits. If you can't whittle the numbers down and make it work so that you only have whatever 12 to 15 children per session, and instead have to take out 30, then there's a very real sacrifice in terms of benefits. They're not going to get anywhere near the amount of depth if the ratios aren't there. You can't do big stuff. You can't, like fires. You'll struggle to work with anything with tools. All of that figures in to the amount of progress you can make with those children. So in the same way, spaces do matter, and the levels of space matter. There's a lot of the benefits of what we would call learning outside the classroom in a school context. So this is not necessarily forest school. The forest school can be included within it. It's essentially learning outside the classroom is usually taking the everyday things and just doing them outdoors. So crafts outdoors, maths outdoors, science in the woods, Not specifically because the woods offers anything more scientific, but because just being in an outdoor space changes things. And we can see that. We can see that it makes a difference, just being out. But then being out in, as you say, the back of a school building on tarmac is completely different from being in the depths of the Scottish wilderness. That is self-evidently true. And for those of you who are on the audio, at the moment I'm in the middle of Worley Woods in a stand of pine trees, and it's a cold but misty morning, and it has a certain atmosphere. There's a different feel in here. There's a different quality to experience. It feels like a place other than that, and that's where a lot of the outside the classroom benefits come in, is simply removing people from a space where that triggers certain behaviors and certain mindsets to a different place will radically change those mindsets, or at least allow the ability to change, to kind of already start moving in that direction. So out here, it feels different. It feels so different from the normal, and so children in particular will act differently. We all know the stories of the children that really struggle within a classroom. They cause the teacher to tear their hair out on more than a daily basis, and you take them out into the woods and they are your best, most able participant, and they love it. And a lot of it is because the environment is different, the people are different, so therefore their behavior can be different. And in many cases, it's also because their needs are being met. So the more we change the environment, the more we can change the outcomes. Like I said, this misty morning will have a different set of outcomes to one in the middle of summer, in the heat. Recently, I had the chance to organize a men's campfire gathering in these same woods. And we came in late winter, late at night, or late in the evening. It's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, somewhere around there. So it was starting to get dark by the time we all arrived and set up. I can tell you the woods in the dark is a completely different ball game. It's a completely different space. And the interactions we had around that campfire, because we had the fire in the middle, we had the tarp overhead, we had the stumps around, and a group of us sitting around the fire, and then just all around us it was just black. Like, we still have light pollution, but it was dark. It was dark. You needed a head torch. And we felt like we were in our own little isolated bubble where we could talk about things that we wouldn't necessarily do in a brightly lit classroom or inside a building, because the quality of the space was different. This is where we start bringing in maybe more of a spiritual element, that the spirit and feel of the place is different, the wilder it is. And a ceremony that we would do after dark, something like naming ceremony or something like that, has a different feel, has a different quality, has a different spirit to one that is done, say, in a school assembly. So place absolutely does matter, and you should I'd still say seek out the wildest place you possibly can find, because that is where you'll find the greatest connection and you can achieve the most. And if you need to make compromises, because as much as I hate to say it, you have to be where the people are, and where the people are, usually high density areas, don't have as much natural space and not good quality natural space. This is a rare exception. This woodland and Worley Woods is a reason why it wins awards, is because it is an oasis inside Birmingham. But the greater the density, the more people you can access, the harder it is to find those spots of wilderness. So there's always a balance, and there's always something that's going to be sacrificed. But what I push for quite often, and probably if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you're probably sick of me hearing it, is the outcome is important. So you've got to be intentional about your goals, and that also means being intentional about the sacrifices you're making. If you have a choice between a built-up area, a built-up playground, and a deep dark wood, then be conscious. You can run something in either, but be conscious about the choices and about the difference that it makes, and choose the one that fits in better with the goals and aims of the sessions. So do you need a forest school? I would still say yes. But even if you do something in that tarmac patio, that's still going to have value. Just because I wouldn't personally call it forest school, doesn't mean it's not valuable. But forest school is a set of ideals and values, and compromising on that, I feel, also has its drawbacks. And can you achieve wilderness outcomes in a non-wilderness? Well, there's a very good argument that we're always tackling the wilderness inside our own minds, and that the spaces that we undertake things in can be just set by our minds, but spaces do help that along its way. Going specifically to a space that will change your mindset starts that ball rolling. But you can practice mindfulness on a busy train. It's harder than if you're out in the middle of the woods in a sit spot, but it's possible. So do what you can where you are, and seek out the wilder spaces, if nothing else, for yourself, because that's where you're probably going to find the closest connection to your soul. With that, my fingers are starting to freeze off holding this cold camera tripod, and I've got lots of work to do for today's session out in the woods as we start working towards Christmas. So with that, say thank you so much for watching and listening, and remember to make the most of every day. I'll catch you all next time.